wanted to start this talk off by sharing with you a question I've always had regarding Christianity, and it's, how did it grow? How did Christianity get to the point where it is today? Because when you think about it, Christianity is so unique and different compared to other religions. Like, when you look at the birth of Jesus, he was born in a manger, he was vulnerable and dependent on others, and he ended up being betrayed and murdered by humans. And when you compare that to the other gods of different religions, it's so different. And yet, with this history, there's over 600 Christian-affiliated universities in the US. There are over 2.4 billion Christians. That's 33% of the entire world's population. So how did we get to this point? It's actually through hospitality. Hospitality is one of the core foundations that led to the rise of the church. Rodney Stark is a leading sociologist, and he actually looks at religions to see how they grow. And so he wrote a book called The Rise of Christianity. And during this book, he talks about one crucial event that really helped the church grow. It was 160 AD, and a plague hit Rome. And during this time, the mortality rate reached over 30%. And Rome during this time had an extreme hierarchy approach, meaning that you only associated with people within your class and only associated with people within your ranking. And so during this time, people were sick and in the streets and no one was helping them. So Christians went out and they helped these people. And it was important to realize that they didn't focus on the differences that they had with those people. They focused on their similarities. And that's when people saw Christians doing these actions. And that's one of the big reasons why Christianity grew to where it is today. But now when I think of hospitality, it's completely different. I start to think of the field of hospitality. Like, I initially think of a hotel. But when you really think about this type of hospitality, you see that there's a sense of selfishness to it. Because at the end of the day, those companies are being hospitable with the hope of gaining something in return. Like, a hotel will be hospitable towards a client to get an extra tip or an extra purchase or a good review. And that's not the type of hospitality that was portrayed by our brothers and sisters in Christ in Rome. And that's not the type of hospitality that's mentioned in the Bible. There are plenty of examples of this hospitality, but I want to focus on Luke chapter 14. Luke 14, verses 12 through 14 says, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." And it's important to look at the context in which Jesus said this. He was invited over to a notable Pharisee's house, and he saw the poor ways in which all the guests were acting. They were all assuming that they were the guest of the highest honor. And immediately after this, Jesus gives the parable of the great banquet, and the story goes like this. There's a master that's hosting a large banquet, and he invites all these people of similar rank and similar class to him. But right before the banquet starts, each guest that he invited gives a reason on why they cannot attend. And so the master becomes frustrated, and he tells his servant to go out to the countryside, to go out to the roads, go out to the streets and invite people so my house may be full. And when I was reflecting on this verse, I found it interesting to look at the heart of the master in this parable, because initially he was only being hospitable towards people that were similar to him, kind of people that it was convenient for him. And he initially overlooked the people that ended up coming to his banquet. And so I started to reflect on this verse. I started to reflect, and I realized that I had so many similarities with the master in this parable. I realized that it's simple for me to be hospitable towards people in which it's convenient. People of a similar age or race or gender or major. Just so far I don't have to go out of my way to be hospitable towards them. And then I started to think and reflect on who are a group of people that I tend to overlook, or who's a people group that I don't think to invite to the table. And when I was reflecting and thinking about this, I thought of a group. And I actually think this is a group that the church overlooks as well. And it's the LGBTQ community. Now, when friends found out that I was talking about this topic, I could see their eyes kind of open, and they would have concern for me, and they would always ask, "Why are you talking about such a controversial topic?" And I would respond with this: I don't think my stance is controversial. See, regardless on your view of same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria, I think we should all agree on how to treat people that associate with the LGBTQ community. That's what I'm saying. See, I think a common problem is when we think of a people group, we think of the second word, not the first. When I think of a group, I just think of a large mass of people. I don't see any variety. I don't see anything unique. And that leads to me generalizing about all those people. But when I think about people, that's different. I start to think about their stories. I think about how they got there. I think about ups and downs in their lives and moments that shaped them. When I think about people, I see that they're a child of God. Because when you strip away everything, you see that we're all image bearers of God, and people deserve to be treated like that. And so when I was researching information about the LGBTQ community, I knew this was an issue that needed to be brought up. 2018 just set the record for most amount of transgendered murders in the US. 41% of all people that are transgendered have attempted suicide at least once in their life. The suicide rate for people that identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual is 5 times higher compared to people that are heterosexual. And so I saw all these numbers, but there was a glimmer of hope because I saw a common theme on what to do to help. And it was actually having conversations. Conversations are so important and impactful. And I think having a conversation with someone is the first step towards hospitality. Because when you have a conversation with someone, they start to feel known because you start to gain more information about them. Caleb Kaltenbach is actually a Biola alum, and he spoke at chapel this Friday. And he's currently a pastor. But his story growing up is very interesting. So his parents divorced. And after the divorce, his father came out as gay and his mother came out as a lesbian. And so after this, he wrote a book called Messy Grace, where he talked about what it was like balancing both these cultures. And during an interview about his book, he was asked on how to have meaningful relationships with other people and other cultures. And he said, engage in conversations. Try to understand who they are as a person. And I think it's important to approach those conversations with love, because 1 John 4:8 says that God is love, and we are called to portray God. And I think it's important to approach a conversation with love, because a conversation with love is a discussion and not a debate. And I think it's hard to start these conversations, because I always have this fear that I'm going to be asked a question that I don't know the answer to, or that there's a certain point that's going to be made and I don't know how to respond to it. But if you wait till you know everything about the gospel, you'll never share the gospel. So it's important to have those conversations. And I realized that being silent is actually just as big of an issue. Because I initially was proud of myself on the way I interacted with the LGBTQ community. Because I didn't say anything offensive. I didn't do anything offensive. I was just silent on the issue. And I actually had a meeting regarding my talk. And the person I was meeting with said a point that just made me mad. Because you know when someone makes a good point and you're just like, yeah, you're right. Like you can't say anything back to it. Like that happened to me. And he told me that being silent is a response. And that's something that really resonated with me. And so I want to start the conversation with the brothers and sisters that are in the LGBTQ community, in the church and outside the church. And I want to apologize. I want to say I'm sorry for letting my insecurities get the best of me. And I'm sorry for being silent. And I'm sorry for not realizing that silence is a response. I'm sorry for only seeing you as your sexual orientation. And I'm sorry for not seeing you as a person and portraying the love that I'm supposed to portray. So I encourage you to reflect on the parable of the great banquet. I want you to put yourselves in the shoes of the master. Who's the group that you overlook? Who are the people that you don't tend to invite initially? And I encourage you to have those conversations, because conversations do lead to hospitality. And I want you to approach those conversations with grace and love. So I want to leave you with the encouraging words from Jesus, from John 15:12. Love each other as I loved you. Thank you, and God bless.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.